Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to our new video in the programming fundamental subject. In this video we are going to talk about another C language construct, which is loop. Basically, when we are talking about programming, we know that the lines of code are going to be run line by line, starting from line 1, 2, 3 until the end or the last line of code. However, the loop construct, similar to the condition construct, help us to run a specific part of the code and ignore another part of the code based on a condition. Thus, the execution of the code is going to be a bit more complicated than the usual execution, which is line by line. Basically, the code is going to start line by line until the compiler arrives to the condition, and there will be an expression, and it will be if the execution evaluated as a true, and then a block of statement will run, and after that the expression will be evaluated again. So it will keep running the block of code, the block of statements, until the condition becomes false, and then it will go to the next line. If it is the end of a program, so it is going to stop. So it is somehow similar to what's happening in the condition statement. Basically, we will have the keywords for loop, and then we will have the block of statement. It can be one statement, two, or more. It depends on the purpose of this loop. As we said, we will have a Boolean expression will be evaluated. If true, the statements will be run, and then we'll go back to the Boolean expression. If not, it will be false. So the statements will never be run except if the Boolean expression evaluated as true. So it will be evaluated first, and then the code will be run. However, the Boolean expression must be well defined. So it will have a starting value and an end value. Otherwise, it will keep running forever, as I said, and that's what we call infinite loop. Basically, we have three constructs in C language to make a loop. By the way, it is shared with other programming languages. So other programming languages has the same constructs: while, do while, and also for loop. Starting with the while loop, we need to use the comparison operators to evaluate the expression. So if it's a true, then the block of statement will run. So if it is false, it will exit, the compiler will exit the loop. Example, so we have a variable called I with the value of 0, and then we set a condition to be I less than 5. Is 0 less than 5? Of course, yes. Then we are going to print that value. So we are going to print I. When it's 0, we print 0 and then new line. So we'll go to another line. And then I plus plus. So we change the value of I by adding 1 to it. It becomes 1. And then 1 less than 5, yes, so it will print 1. So we already print 0 and 1. And so on and so forth until it arrives to number 4. So 4 less than 5, yes, it's going to print it. And then add 1, become 5. 5 less than 5, no, so it will exit the loop. Similar thing happening with the for statement. However, for statement is like an abbreviation for the loop. It is one line statement, consists the initial value that we are going to start with. In the previous example was I equals 0. So it will be as a parameter, if I can say, and followed with semicolon. After that, the condition or the expression itself, the Boolean expression. And lastly, with the increment or decrement. In the previous example was I plus plus, right? So all of them will be here in the same line with the for statement, and then there will be another statements, the block of statement after that. So the first expression is going to perform only once. The initial value, only when the compiler arrives to for loop, will initiate it. After that, will be ignored. So if we said that int I equals 0, I will be 0, and after that, if we increase it, will be 1, right? So we will run the code, go back to the for, this will be ignored, and the condition will be evaluated directly. So the condition or expression 2 is going to be the expression to check or to validate, or the condition to validate the Boolean expression. And lastly, for loop can take one or more expressions and we divide them by comma. What does that mean? See the example here. We have x equals 0 and then y equal num. So we have two initial value. We separate them by a comma. So this is the initial value. We have two variables, then semicolon, then we have one condition, and then semicolon, and then we have two statements, one increment for x and the other one is decrement for y. All right? So we can have one or more expression. For loop also can be initiated without expression, such as the example here, for, and then we have a semicolon. That means we did not initiate the value, the initial value, which means we have to initiate it before the loop, before for. The last statement is do while statement, and do while statement is going to execute the code before checking the expression, which means if we have a print statement here, it's going to print. After print, is going to check the expression. So for example, we have integer I equal 5, and then do print I, which is 5, then I plus plus, so I will be 6, and then while I less than 5. So we already print 5, all right? We printed already. After that, we change I to be 6. So 6 less than 5, no, so it will exit. But it is already print the value of I, which is 5. Here is a complete example about loop. So we define a variable male students equal to 10, and then we started the loop. The loop initial value is I equals 0, and then I male less than or equal male students. So 0 less than or equal 10, yes, it's going to run the printf, enter student's name. So it's going to print enter student's name, and then new line. After that, we have scanf. The user is going to enter the first student name, will enter it, and then it's going to print student's name present. So for example, Nasruddin present, and then it will add 1. So 0 plus plus become 1. 1 less than male student, yes, is going to print again, enter student's name. Scanf, so it's going to ask the user to enter, and this time let's say fatoni, and then it's going to print fatoni present. Then I plus plus become 2. 2 less than male students, which is 10, yes. So it's going to repeat until 10 times. Imagine that this is a program to take the student's attendance, okay? There is another concept related to the loop, which is that you can include a loop inside another loop, and that's what we call nested loop. So as you can see here, we will have for loop, and the statement begin here, ends here, and inside it we have another loop, which the block begin here and ends here. And here are some statements, and here also there are other statements. There is an infinite loop, which is a loop that never stops. If the Boolean expression were not well defined, you may encounter an infinite loop. So the result will be repeated and repeated and repeated and will never stop. So you need to make sure that you write a well-defined Boolean expression. Here is what it looks like. So we have for loop with no initial value, with no condition, with no decrement and decrement, and a print statement. This loop will run forever. So it's going to print this loop will run forever, and then a new line. This loop will run forever, and new line. This loop will run forever. Go and give it a try, okay? In conclusion, loop allow multiple times execution for some code. Loop has two types. The first one is entry controlled loop, which will begin with a condition, then run the code. Example of that, for loop and while loop. And there is exit control loop, which will run the code before checking the loop, before checking the Boolean expression. And that the example of that is do while. In sum, C language provide 3 loop constructs: while, do while, and that's all. We will discuss more in the class. See you. Salam alaikum.